Welcome back to the Psychology vlog. Our first episode covered assessment and feedback, and today we'll be talking about listening to students. But first, some introductions. I'm Ali Pike and I am the Director of Teaching and Learning, so I have oversight of the different courses, their structure and the modules within them.
And I'm Richard DeVisser. I'm the Director of Student Experience, which means I'm a kind of link really between all of the academic advisors within the school, but also between the School of Psychology and the student support services that are available.
And I'm Robin Banerjee. I'm Deputy Head of School and also Chair of the Board of Studies, which has responsibility for all courses, undergraduate and postgraduate, within the School of Psychology. So I'm going to start off by asking you guys some questions.
Okay.
So I want to talk with you about how we listen to students. And I wanted to start off with you, Ali, to talk about how we gather feedback through midterm module evaluation questionnaires. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes. So these are a very informal, flexible way of gaining the views of students during a module. So all module conveners are very much encouraged to get feedback from their students whilst the module is still running. Some conveners will do this via a paper-based questionnaire. Some will do this online. Just whatever way is going to mean that student voices are heard. We like to keep that very flexible and done in such a way that if possible, changes can be made right there and then, midstream, to improve the experience for students.
Fantastic. Can I follow up with another question, please, Ali? What I wanted to ask you about was course evaluation questionnaires, because sometimes students may have opinions about how the course as a whole is running, not just this particular module,
Yes.
but the course as a whole. How do those get captured in the online system?
Okay, so at the end of each of the terms, there is a course evaluation questionnaire that's centrally administered by the university, and this captures the course as a whole, not just very specific modules. So at that point, in say January or February, students will be asked just very brief questions about each of the modules, but most importantly, they'll also be asked about their overall experience of psychology in term 1 and then again at the end of term 2. So that's a useful place where it might not be for tweaking an individual module, but perhaps thinking across the piece how modules fit together, what the experience is like from a student perspective, taking all of these modules.
Fantastic. Now, one of the things that is an important context and forum for students to raise their concerns or questions or air their opinions about different aspects of the course is the student rep system.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, Richard, about student reps. Could you tell us a little bit about who student reps are and what they do?
Okay, so the student reps are, well, it's in the name, they're fellow students who have nominated themselves and been elected through a process that's run through the Students' Union. And the idea is that they can be a voice for students in terms of raising concerns about really any issues that concern them about their course. But it might be particularly about more broad issues, not about specific modules, about why is this being taught in this particular way, but it might be about how can the overall experience of being a student here be improved. It might be to do with how courses and things are kind of managed. It might be about facilities, any of those things. And the students have a number of ways, the student representatives have a number of ways of telling us as faculty members and as professional services staff what to do. Two key ones are through their regular termly student experience group meetings, which is a place where the students of all the different years can come across and raising the issues they might have, and there's an opportunity to discuss those in a setting which is just about student experience. A little bit later each term, there's also student representatives come along to the school meetings where there is a regular fixed slot on the agenda for student representatives to raise those student issues. And of course it's possible for the student reps or individual students to raise any of those issues with academic advisors or with you presumably, or
Yeah.
with Tom ultimately as head of school if those things come up. But the student representatives, there are elected students in every year of the course, first year, second year, third year. For each of the talk postgraduate programs there's a space, and the postgraduate research students also have their student representatives. And it's something that the university, applies across all schools in a way, and it's a way of having a formalised relationship between the Students' Union and each of the schools of study.
And having been involved in many committee meetings myself, I can see how much genuine input we get from students, and it's a really, really important part of what we do.
And one of the important things that I think the students this year are particularly interested in is having a properly functioning psychology society as well, which is another good way to increase, not just in a teaching staff and student kind of way, but actually having some kind of connection between students and faculty members around issues that we all find interesting, like psychology more broadly.
Absolutely. And one other point that I wanted to add to that about the involvement of student reps is within one particular forum, the annual course review. This takes place every year. In fact, we're in the middle of it right now, where we, in the autumn term and the beginning of the spring term of the year, look back over the previous year's teaching and student experience and think about what went well. So we definitely want to look at all the strengths, but also what perhaps could be tweaked or improved, changed in some way in order to improve the teaching and learning experience and the student experience more broadly. And student reps are a really big part of that, because they work with us in order to inform change, positive change for the future. So student input is hugely important, and these are some of the ways in which students can have a really important voice in how the courses function within the school. But sometimes, as Richard was saying, there may be very specific issues that come up where you want to raise points which are outside of committee meetings or formal structures. So can I ask you, as a module convener,
Yes.
what would you do if you were a student and you had real issues about a specific module? What would be the place to go to?
The best thing to do in that case is to go to the module convener, look up their office hours, go and see them, or send them an email, but definitely give the convener the chance to hear what your issues are and hopefully be able to fix it.
And what would happen if, after having had some conversations with a module convener, you still feel like, actually, I don't think they've really grasped what I'm saying, or I'm still not really happy about what's happened on this module? Where would you go next?
Well, there's a few different avenues for students. One would be to come either directly to Richard or directly to me. Our first question will be, have you discussed this with the module convener? So that really is your first port of call. Another useful avenue is via the student reps. So often student reps then can kind of take the temperature of an entire cohort and give us really useful information through the student experience group, for example. Or student reps sometimes might come to see Richard or myself, and that can be, it can sometimes be nice to kind of go through an intermediary if you don't want to be kind of personally put on the spot.
I mean, adding there as well, the idea of talking to your academic advisor about this as well, because once you have tried with a module convener, they might be able to say, okay, they may be able to have a word on your behalf, or they might be able to suggest other ways of addressing the issue, so that it doesn't come down to, often, quite rightly, students might feel uncomfortable going directly to someone else in that particular context. So there are a range of people. So the student reps and academic advisors are really good, and as Ali said, we're also both very open to having students come approach us directly.
Yeah, and of course, ultimately as well, you've got the option of seeing the head of school, Tom Ormerod, who's available to listen to students at any time as well. So you can go and make an appointment with the head of school coordinator, Mar, to arrange a meeting with Tom. But sometimes I do know that the points that might be troubling you, or that you might have questions about, don't relate just to a specific module, but relate to how everything is fitting together. And I know we've already said you might be expressing those points in the course evaluation questionnaire, but you might not want to wait that long.
Yeah.
So if you're feeling actually, I'm really not happy about the way that things are working across these different modules, it might be to do with the assessments or the burden of workload and things like that, where could I express those kinds of points of view to be heard more quickly?
Your first port of call about a particular course would be the course convener. If you are an undergraduate, the course convener is Paul Sparks, and each of the different MSc courses also have their own convener, and I'm sure that those students are aware of who that is.
And the course handbook obviously also details a lot of information about the nature of the course, and it's always possible to actually go and look at that course handbook, talk about how that matches with the experience that you're having, and then use that as a platform for that conversation with the course convener. And again, I think the same thing then applies. They can still come and talk to one of us,
Sure.
Director of Teaching and Learning, Director of Student Experience, and me as Chair of Board of Study as well, and go to Tom. But we know there are some things that we really struggle with as well, that are not entirely within our control. So I'm going to hand over to you guys to say something about what happens when timetabling is being a nightmare.
Okay, unfortunately, timetabling sometimes is a nightmare. And it's one of the things that frustrates us in the School of Psychology, and I think across the schools as well, because we don't actually set the timetables, whether that's for teaching or for the exam timetables either. They're set centrally because obviously in the university with so many things going on and with limited space, that's the only way that it can be done. So what we can do in psychology is, within the spaces that are allocated to us, we'll do our best to reallocate you if for some reason there's a clash of courses, which we try to avoid, or there's some other reason why you can't be at a particular place at a particular time. With the examinations, unfortunately, there's not much that can be done around that. But I guess what you should know is that if there are issues that come up about the placement of assessments within a module, for example, that might be something you can take to the module team, so they can talk about when does a particular assignment come in. But for things that are set like exam timetables and things like that, they're kind of out of our control. So we're often as frustrated as students might be. So complaining to us would be something that we'll listen to that, of course, but there may not always be anything we can do about that. We can pass that along to the people who do organise that, but some of those things are also out of our control, unfortunately.
Although I think the point you made about communication is really at the heart of it, isn't it? If you do have concerns about something, then do communicate them to us. We can't promise that we'll be able to change all of them because not all of those things are in our control, but where we can change them, we'll be very sympathetic and responsive to that. And we've got an amazing professional services team in the school office who are really supportive about things like making changes to seminar groups. If you've got issues with work experience or childcare or anything like that, we'll always be sympathetic to that. But the important thing is to communicate with us so that we actually know what's happening. If students start, for example, just changing groups by themselves without communicating with anyone, it can lead to all sorts of problems, not least overcrowding in rooms.
Yes.
So communication is really important, and as Richard, as you said, I think the key is even though we won't necessarily be able to change things immediately when it comes to something like exam timetables, we can actually feed the points and concerns onwards to the people who are in charge of it, and changes can be made. And actually that has happened over the years, hasn't it? So, do we have any final thoughts to add about listening to students?
Well, I'd just reiterate that point. If there's anything that is troubling you or concerning you or just not clear, then there are a number of people you can talk to. Your academic advisor in the first place if it's a general one, if it's specific to a particular module, the module convener or the module teaching team. And other things that are, if you're not sure or you don't get a satisfactory response for them, you could come straight to Ali or to me. I did say to me then as well, not just to Ali. And to Robin as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think one point to bear in mind, which has been alluded to already, is the importance and value of those feedback and drop-in sessions, the office hours, which are listed on the website for every member of staff within the school. Every single one of us who's teaching will have 2 drop-in hours during the week. They're there on the website. really make use of them. They're a resource for you. If you've got questions or comments, we will be pleased to see you during the office hour.
And if it's something that where you can't make the time to schedule as well, do feel free to email them as well, and you know we'll do our best to find a time that suits both groups.
Absolutely. I'll hand over to Ali to close this episode of the blog.
Okay, excellent. Thank you both very much for joining me. And I will just end by saying you have more power than you think, so use your voice.
Yay.
Bye.